Hey guys, it's Jasma, and today I'm going to make a matcha tiramisu. So the traditional tiramisu was one of my earliest videos. It was a Christmas tiramisu, and I've also made a couple of other videos on tiramisu as well. So I thought it was about time that I brought another flavor of tiramisu. So this matcha tiramisu is full of matcha flavor. It has a really nice and green color, and I'm going to be making it a little bit different from the traditional kind. I'm going to put matcha sponge cakes in between each layer, and it's going to end up in a mousse ring so it comes out like an actual cake, and I'm going to decorate the top with some whipped cream. This is quite simple, just like the traditional tiramisu, although once again it does take a couple of steps, so let's get started. So first I'm going to make the matcha sponge cake to go in between each layer of the mousse. This is one of the easiest sponge cake recipes. You basically just whip up the eggs, combine it with the flour, and then bake it off. So let's move over to the machine. To make this matcha sponge cake, you're obviously going to need matcha powder, and you're also going to use this throughout the entire recipe. So when you're shopping for matcha, you want to make sure you buy a good quality one that gives you the best flavor and the best color. So today I am using a organic matcha powder that I found at Costco. It comes in a can. It has a great amount, but if you don't think you're going to use the entire thing, I would also recommend you to go buy it in places like Bulk Barn that is sold loosely, so you can just buy the amount that you need, because this can get a little bit pricey. I found the best way to incorporate the matcha powder into this cake without forming bits and pieces and lumps in the cake is to incorporate with the sugar and then with the eggs. So first I'm going to mix this with the white granulated sugar before I do anything else. Next I'm going to crack my eggs into a mixer bowl, and then we can start to whip it up. I'm using my stand mixer today, but of course you can do this with a hand mixer. Once the egg starts to grow in volume and become foamy, add in 1/3 of the sugar and the matcha. Then just mix. It has now become paler, and you could start to see the tracks of the beater, so now add in another 1/3 of the sugar. Now that the eggs are becoming really thick and foamy, add in your last bit of sugar and matcha. The eggs are now ready, and to tell if it is done, it should take around 10 minutes. The eggs should be really foamy and almost tripled in volume. It should be nice and pale, and it won't be able to hold a peak, but it should be really thick, and it won't be able to disappear back into the rest of the mixture really quickly. And the bubbles throughout the entire mixture should be consistent, so it should be really smooth, and you won't see huge bubbles. It should all be around the same size. Now we can combine it with the flour. So for the flour, you want to combine it with a little bit of baking powder just to help the cake rise. And then I'm just going to sift this into the egg mixture to make sure there are no huge lumps. I like to do this in smaller bits, so around half of the mixture at a time. And then to combine, I found it actually makes it easier if you use the whisk from the mixer to really slowly mix it together. Now this is important that you do not overmix it, so you do not deflate the mixture too much, but I found the whisk makes it a little bit faster to combine the flour, but it also helps that the whisk is so farther apart. It's a big balloon whisk, so there's less of a chance to deflate the eggs. So fold it really gently, and then sift in the rest of the flour. Once there are no more dry bits of flour in this mixture, stop mixing it with the whisk and go in with a spatula to make sure that all of the flour is combined, but also not deflating the eggs. The mixture should be super foamy, as you can see here. It should be really light and fluffy. So just scrape the sides of the bowl and make sure you get the bottom to make sure everything is incorporated. The batter is now ready, and now to bake the cake, I have an 1-inch cake pan with a removable bottom, and I placed a sheet of parchment paper on the bottom to make sure the cake doesn't stick, and my oven is already preheated at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, ready to go. Today I'm actually going to be cutting off a little bit of this cake after it is baked, but if you have like a 7-inch cake pan, you can use that as well. I just don't want the cake layers to actually show after the mousse ring is removed from the tiramisu, so it's for the purposes of visual effects, but if you don't care about that, use whatever type of pan that you like. So I'm just going to pour this batter into the cake pan. You can see this is a really fluffy mixture that comes out to a really nice and spongy cake. and then into the oven this goes. While the cake is baking, I'm going to make the tiramisu. So today I'm going to add a little bit of gelatin to my tiramisu to help it solidify a little bit better and make it easier since we are doing this in a mousse grain. So I'm going to add my gelatin powder into some water and then just set this aside and allow it to bloom. For the eggs, I'm going to separate the yolks from the whites, and you're not going to need any egg whites in this recipe, so you could just save it for something else. Make sure everything that comes in contact with the egg whites are dry though, so you can actually use it for other things. If you're not super confident with separating yolks from whites, leaving the eggs at room temperature actually makes it a lot easier. The cake is baked in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 23 minutes. Try not to overbake your cake or it will turn out really dry. And to test if it is done, just insert a toothpick into the center, and if it comes out clean, that means it's cooked. So now I'm just going to leave it and let it cool completely. And meanwhile, I'm going to cook my egg yolks on a double boiler. Prepare a pot of boiling water and turn it down to low. Place the bowl of yolks over top of the double boiler. And then pour in the white granulated sugar. Then just stir everything together. By doing this, you are not only dissolving the white granulated sugar, but it is also cooking the yolks slowly. Scrape the bowl every few minutes to make sure nothing scrambles. You want to do this for around 10 minutes until the yolks are nice and pale in color and it has grown in volume. I've been stirring this for around 10 minutes now, so I'm going to take it off the heat. I like to place it on a towel so I can clean off the condensation on the bottom of the bowl. So now I'm going to transfer this into my stand mixer bowl, and if you have any lumps inside of your mixture, this is where you would pass it through a sieve. Once again, back with the stand mixer, I'm going to start by whipping up this egg mixture a little bit more to allow it to become a little bit fluffier and also cool it down slightly. The egg mixture has become even thicker and paler in color, so now I'm going to add in the mascarpone cheese. And along with that, I'm also going to add in the matcha powder and just stir until smooth. Alright, the mixture is now smooth. There are no lumps of green tea or mascarpone cheese. So now I'm going to melt down my ballooned gelatin that is now nice and squishy in the microwave for around 10 seconds. Never over microwave your gelatin because it will explode. You can also do this with some hot water underneath it, but I'm just going to microwave it until it is melted. Microwave until everything is nice and smooth and liquidy. And now add this into the mixture while it's still running. Make sure to incorporate the gelatin with the mixture while it is still nice and warm to make sure that it actually mixes together instead of clumping up into little bits. So now I'm just going to allow this to continue mixing on slow speed so that it cools down a lot quicker, and meanwhile we're going to work on the cake. Alright, now for the cake, I'm going to be slicing this into 3 layers to fit inside of the mousse. You can cut it into how many layers you like. So this is completely cooled now, and I'm just going to take it out of the pan, scraping the sides with a butter knife. Then just flip it out. And now I'm going to trim off the dome on the top of the cake so we have nice and flat layers. I'm going to be using my cake leveler as always, but of course you can use a serrated knife. Now that the cake is cut into 3 layers, I'm going to be removing a little bit of the edge of each layer. Now the purpose of doing this is that my ring mold is going to be 8 inches and the cake is also currently 8 inches. But I don't want this cake to show through the mousse after it is done, which is why I'm going to turn this into a 7-inch layered cake. Now if you have a 7-inch cake pan, then you should just bake the cake in that, but I didn't have one, so I'm just going to be using this 7-inch cake pan. This is a chiffon cake pan, and I'm just going to use the bottom as a template to make this into a 7-inch cake. I'm using a small serrated knife to trim the edges. If you don't have a 7-inch cake pan to use as a guide, you can also just cut out a sheet of paper into a 7-inch circle and use that as a guide. A traditional tiramisu would have ladyfingers soaked with coffee as like the cake inside of it, but today I wanted to do something a little bit different. So we have matcha sponge cake, and I'm not going to soak this in anything at all because I feel like it already has a good amount of flavor, but if you would like, you can also soak it with some green tea syrup. We can now combine the cream into our mascarpone cheese mixture. Once this has been chilled in the fridge, it should be a little bit thicker and a lot stiffer. So I'm going to first whip this up and allow it to become a little more airy so that once we combine the cream, everything will be a light mixture. Alright, you can see the matcha mixture has now become slightly paler in color and it has loosened up. So now we can pour in the cream. Now make sure this was nice and cold before you actually add it into the mixture. So as I was preparing everything else, this was chilling in the fridge. I'm going to add in half of this cream into the mixture. I'm just going to mix that through. Once that's combined, I'm going to scrape down the sides of the bowl to make sure everything is nice and evenly mixed. This is a little bit different from a regular tiramisu because usually you would whip up the cream separately and then combine it into the mascarpone cheese mixture by folding it with a spatula. But I found that whipping the cream directly into this mixture actually also works really well, and it's a lot easier and faster too. And then I'm just going to add in the rest of the cream. And then just whisk until this mixture is nice and stiff. Now we can place everything into the ring mold and allow it to chill. So since this is a mousse ring mold, it does not have a bottom, and I like to place a sheet of plastic wrap on it so I can move it around without worrying about everything falling through the bottom. I'm also going to fill a piping bag with about 1/3 of the mousse. And this is going to make it easier for you to fill in between those gaps of the cake. Alright, so first I'm going to place a layer of the cake and fill in the sides with the tiramisu filling. I like to use a piping bag because it just makes it faster. Then scoop on a couple scoops of the tiramisu filling on top. Using an ice cream scoop, make sure that every single layer is nice and even. Then just do this until you run out of cake layers and tiramisu filling. Once the surface is nice and smooth, cover it with a sheet of plastic wrap. And don't worry if the surface is not completely smooth because we will be covering this with more cream afterwards. Alright, now that this is nice and sealed, I'm going to place it into the fridge for it to chill for at least 8 hours or an overnight, which is best. My tiramisu has chilled in the fridge overnight, so it is now nice and stable. I'm going to now remove the pan, remove the plastic wrap, and also loosen the bottom layer. Use a warm damp towel to loosen the cake from the sides of the ring mold and remove the mold. Then use an offset spatula to clean up the edges. I'm also going to be whipping up some cream to use as a decoration on top of the mousse cake. You don't have to do this, of course, you can just dust it with some icing sugar and matcha powder and it would be good to go, but I feel like this does make it extra pretty. I'm going to be making cream in 2 colors. So one is just going to be plain white, the regular cream color, and I'm also going to be adding matcha powder to the other half to create 2 colors. So first I'm going to dump most of the cream into my mixer bowl and I'm going to leave behind about a tablespoon. To the leftover cream, I'm going to pour in the matcha powder. Then just mix it together until there are no lumps of the matcha powder. Once that's smooth, you can start to whip the cream. Now that the cream is slightly thickened, add in the icing sugar. Then just whisk until stiff peaks form. this is now formed stiff peaks. And now I'm going to load half of this cream into a piping bag fitted with a nice and round tip. Now I'm just going to place this into the fridge while I work on the rest of the cream. Now for the rest of the cream, we're just going to add in the matcha mixture. For decorating, I'm going to be piping dollops and then spreading it out with this palette knife. You can also use a teaspoon, but of course you can decorate this however you like. Pipe dollops of the whipped cream on top of the cake, alternating the different colors, and then smooth it out with a offset spatula to form a teardrop shape. Continue to do this until the cake is filled, and stagger the different colors to form a nice pattern. Be sure to clean off the offset spatula every single time that you smooth out the color to make sure that they do not mix. So that's it with this matcha tiramisu. A little bit different than a traditional tiramisu. Instead of using ladyfingers, we have sponge cake here, but it does taste really good and I really like the color that comes off of it as well. So I really hope you can try this out. If you would want to eat this, make sure to keep it in the fridge before you serve so it's nice and cold. Thanks for watching and see you guys next time. Bye!